Hi there, this is Davis Hill, Bells and Chancel Choir Director at Community United Methodist Church in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. This video is just a brief tutorial about how to use soundtrap.com, a digital tool that we can use to record ourselves singing, not together in real time, but on your own time, and then composite them together into what I call a virtual choir piece. Okay, so I'm just going to kind of walk you through what that's like when you log in and you do your first one. So let's assume that you've successfully signed up on the soundtrap.com website, and however that is, whether you've gone on yourself or I've invited you with a link, there'll be a separate video and thing for that. So you've got here on your landing page, the part that you see when you first log on. There's some stuff up here about your profile that you can play with. This is an ad, I think, that may change from time to time. So basically, you want to scroll down until you get to this. You can see My Projects highlighted. It might be collapsed like this. Okay, so you can just click on this arrow to expand that. And you're probably going to see only one or however many I've invited you to at this moment, unless you've made some on your own. So you're going to come over here and click on this Studio button. Let's go ahead and do that. That's going to take you into actually the project. Okay, so let me kind of walk you through what you're seeing here. This is just a visual representation of what's going on in terms of the audio, the sound of this project. So there are kind of two main parts to two main axes here to this sort of graph-like looking thing. The first is that on this top, on the x-axis here, we have this is the amount of time that's elapsed. These are the measures of music. So you can see we've got measure. If this guy will move 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, okay, etc., going on. This doesn't necessarily correspond to the measures that would be printed in a hymnal or a piece of music. It just corresponds to how the computer is counting the number of measures that have elapsed. So in this case, we're singing this hymn, "Break Thou the Bread of Life," 599. The actual hymn begins here at what for the computer is measure 5, because I've added 4 measures of introduction like we normally do when we sing. Okay, so one thing you can do that can be immensely helpful is that we can expand or contract this measure view. So what we would do is we'd go down here to this corner. You've got a plus and a minus magnification glass. If we clicked minus, we'd get, now we're seeing every tick is 8 measures. Okay, so if you wanted to kind of get your bearings, you could do that. But I think for the most part, we're going to click it a little bit more and get to the point where we can see every measure delineated here. And these ticks, just like a ruler, these are actually each beat, because we're in 4/4 here. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 beats per measure. That's pretty easy to figure out. Okay, on this axis, on the y-axis, we've got what are called the individual tracks, and that's just any time that a certain voice or a certain instrument is playing. So up here in the red, we've got piano accompaniment. And then down here in orange, instructions. Over here, these are the reference tracks that I've made where it plays exactly your own part. And then for this first initial experimental one, I've preloaded, or I shouldn't say preloaded, but I've pre-created tracks that you can record onto for each individual here. Connie, Lana, Vic, Fred, and Davis. Karen and Dave aren't in there, but they will be. So that's what's going on right there. So we can see that if we were to set this thing back to measure 1 and we were to play it, we would be hearing 2 things until we got to measure 5. We'd hear piano accompaniment and we'd hear what's called instructions, which is just me yelling at you, telling you when to come in. So let's actually try that. Let's come down here to our little control panel thingy here, and let's press play to hear that. 4-bar introduction. 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, verse. Okay, so we heard 2 things. We heard this and we heard this. That makes sense. Now, if we keep going from measure 5, we're going to hear this, and this looks like it's going to peter out. We're going to hear the piano, but we're also going to start to hear these individual parts as well. So let's try that. 1. Okay, so we're hearing it, because this is a hymn, the piano part is exactly the same as the individual vocal parts, so it doesn't really sound like it, except that it's louder. But if this were a different piece with different vocal and piano parts, you'd be able to actually tell. But so in any case, that's basically how this works. What you see is what you hear. with some exceptions. One exception is that if we go over here to each little panel for each voice, each track, we've got a couple of little buttons here. The first one is, this is a little picture that just shows you what it is. You don't need to worry about that. The main ones I'm going to talk about are, you've got this volume knob here, which if you click and you drag up and down, you can change that way. What is that? Counterclockwise is down, clockwise is up. So you can adjust the volume to hear for yourself. This headphone is called Solo, and what it does is it mutes every track other than the one you're clicking on. So let's say that let's not use the piano there. Let's say that I'm a soprano and I'm listening to it, but I really just want to hear my own part. What I can do is I can just click this Solo button. Now you can see that all of the other tracks have this X sound, have been muted automatically with you. And then if I was to go down here and play this, I can hear only the soprano. And to undo that, I'm just going to click on the headphones again. Now we're back to normal. Now if I wanted, and I can do that with multiple things. Maybe I wanted to hear soprano and alto. Well, I can do that. So you have a lot of flexibility in terms of deciding what you want to hear. When it's time for you to record, you might decide that you only want to hear piano and me yelling, or maybe you don't want to hear me yelling at all, right? Or maybe you would like to hear piano and, alto or something. Oops, alto. Of course, as I mentioned, for a hymn, that's not really that significant, but just bear with me in terms of general ideas. In the future, I might be splitting the piano into right and left hands, so you'd be able to select that if you wanted to, okay? But mostly, it's just for you to decide what you want to hear best. Maybe you would just like to hear the piano. Maybe that feels good to you. If you're not totally certain on your part, maybe you'd like to just hear your own part. You have the option. And it's important, an important thing for me to tell you at this point is that whatever you select, whatever you mute or don't mute or whatever at this step, none of that affects the final recording. That's the benefit of having a digital tool like this, is that since we're not recording to tape or to analog media, and since it's in a computer, we've got the ability to copy and paste, to undo and redo, to fiddle with things basically until we're done. So your job, all you got to do is pick the setting that you want to hear. So let's say, I'm a soprano, I only want to hear soprano, and go for it. And then when I come in later, once everybody has done their thing, I am going to, it looks like somebody just popped in. I'm going to go through and finagle all of it to make it sound really good. So you don't have to worry about that at all. This is simply for you to use what is the best for you. So let's suppose that you're going to actually do that now that we've talked about that a lot. Let's pretend that I'm Connie. So I'm going to come down here and I'm going to click on my track. And you can see that it's selected because there's this blue bar and then it gets purple here. Okay. So let's go back to, I'm going to use this, I'm going to come down to my control panel here and click on this super backwards button to go all the way back to the beginning. Now I've got a couple of options here. As I mentioned before, I can pick, before I record, I can mute or solo mute which tracks I want to hear. So let's suppose that I just want to hear that soprano line again. I'm going to do this. Okay. And then I can, you don't need to worry about this key or tempo thing, but you can choose whether you'd like to have the metronome on or off. And if you do that, you'll hear, I'm just going to press play here. Okay, so you can decide whether you'd like to have that on behind you when you record. Again, that part's not actually recorded, so you're safe. Let's suppose that I've done that. Now, there's one more thing here, which is that you need to use headphones while you record. So in the previous iterations, I had headphones, you had multiple programs, and it was hard to figure out what to do. You only have to use the one program, but you still need to use headphones because we want to prevent whatever you're hearing from going back into the recording microphone. Because if you do, it'll get doubled, and we'll have like an echo effect. And if too many people do that, we'll get feedback basically in the recording, and it won't sound good. So you want to make sure that you're using headphones. And I think that for the most part, if you don't have headphones connected this program actually has a pop-up window that will come up in the middle here and say, are you sure you want to use headphones? You don't want to use headphones? You should always say, no, let me put my headphones in before I go. Now, this button here, this R, it says record mode. That's a misnomer. It doesn't really have anything to do with recording. It's not like arming or disarming a recording if you know about using a board. Really what it does is it turns off or on monitoring. So monitoring, if I click that, what's going to happen is that it's going to play back for you what it's recording from your microphone in real time through your headphones. That's, again, a setting that you can choose to use or not use. I don't like it because I find it really annoying, but if you feel like if you want to know whether you're on pitch or kind of know how your voice sounds, you can have that on. It's up to you. I prefer to have it off, so I just click off. And by the way, if you're using headphones, which you are, of course, it will by default be enabled. So if you don't want that, just click it off. I find it to be very distracting. Okay, so here I go. I'm going to start, and I have decided that I am going to just start recording my voice. So let's just take a stab at it, okay? I've turned my metronome on, so I'm going to hear that. Now I've turned piano accompaniment off, which is fine if I know what my starting pitch is. So I'm going to come over here and I'm just going to play it right now to get that in my mind. Okay, cool. All right. So here I go. I'm going to press record. I've selected my track. I've decided that I'm going to only hear soprano. I've decided not to do the monitoring. So I'm going to come down here and press the record. It's going to count me in with the metronome enabled. So for 2 measures, I think. 3, 4, here I go. I am singing, yes I am. Dun 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 dun. Dun 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 dun. Introduction. Here it would come. Okay, cool. So I'm pressing done. There's a little loading bit. Then you should see this appear. It should kind of flip in like that. Now I want to come to listen to it, so I'll go back there and press play. Hey, I can't hear anything. That's because this track is still soloed and all these other ones are grayed out and muted. So I'm going to unsolo that. I'm going to come down and solo this so I can hear it. I'm just going to go all the way back. Let me play this right. I'm going to turn off this metronome because I just want to hear my voice. I am singing, yes I am. Dun, 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 dun. Oh, cool. All right, so it worked. The system automatically adds some reverb, which you may be able to tell, so I can play with that. That's kind of a lot of reverb right now. I think there's a setting I can do, but you don't need to worry about that. Okay, so essentially that's it. I've recorded my voice. Of course, when you were actually doing this, you would probably, you'd go for the whole time. So here's the first verse. Here's the second verse. And I've got these instructions here that would be yelling at you. I'm going to mute those guys to tell you what to do. So we'd be going along.
Here comes verse 2.
That's my instructions.
Verse 2.
Okay, and off we go, right? It's just like being in rehearsal for reals. Okay? Let's see, I think I've pretty much covered everything. You'll also notice too, I'll try to do a better job of this in the future, but you'll also notice too that the verses are kind of delineated by this break in the line here. I'm going to go ahead and make a break right there, and I'm going to make a break right here too to make it a little bit easier to see what's going on. Okay? So again, you choose the settings, you choose what you want to hear when you record. It doesn't affect the ultimate result at all. The other thing is that if you didn't like that, just click on it to select it, and you could right click or you could go to edit up here and just delete it and try again. You can do it as many times as you want. We do have some tools to kind of massage each person's recording into something that gels a bit better with that sound that sounds good. We can fix your mistakes basically. So don't make it don't get too neurotic about making it exactly right. We can volume people up and volume them down. We have some reverb and stuff. We also have access to auto-tune, which if you have heard about that in pop music, it uses a computer algorithm to basically drag your notes more correctly onto the actual notes, so improving the tuning. Okay, so we've got toys to play with. At this point, I really just want you to get in there and try to experiment with it and hopefully have some success. Um, Send me an email if you have any problem, and I'll be trying to stay in touch with everybody pretty consistently throughout this process. Okay, so this was how to use Soundtrap in 20 minutes or less, and hope it's fun. I'd really like to keep doing this if this turns out to be something that people like. We could do something every week. We could do all kinds of different things. So give it a try. Let me know if you have any questions. davishill@gmail.com, and I'll see you out there. Thanks. Bye.